Before history was recorded in ink and blood, there was only the struggle for destiny, a clash between the fading age of heroes and the iron dawn of empire. It is a story that asks whether the future is written by the gods or forged by the sword, a tale of how a ragged band of exiles became the masters of the world. This is the war for Latium, the crucible of Rome. Long before the Capitoline Hill crowned the earth, the Italian peninsula was a tapestry of rustic tribes and ancient fortresses. To the west lay the powerful Latin people, settled in the fertile plains of Latium under their aging king, Latinus. To the east, along the jagged Tiber River, dwelt the Rutulians, a fierce warrior nation led by Turnus, a man who burned with the pride of Achilles and the hunger of a wolf. And into this simmering pot of alliances and blood feuds, from the smoking ruins of Troy, came the foreigner, Aeneas. He was a man burdened by the gods, carrying his father Anchises on his shoulders and the household gods of his fallen city in his hands, seeking only a place to rest the oars of his weary fleet. But fate is rarely a gentle host. When Aeneas made landfall at the mouth of the Tiber, the heavens themselves seemed to tilt. Lavinia, the daughter of King Latinus, was the most sought-after maiden in all of Italy. Her hand had been promised to Turnus, the Rutulian king, a union that would cement a powerful alliance between the Latins and the warlords of the East. Yet, the oracles spoke of a different future. They whispered of a stranger coming from across the sea, a man who would rise not from the soil of Italy, but from the blood of Troy, to take Lavinia as his bride and found an empire that would shake the foundations of the earth. Latinus, a king who feared the immutable will of the gods, welcomed the Trojan leader. Turnus, seeing his honor and his inheritance stolen by a wandering exile, howled for war. It began not with a grand declaration, but with a stain upon the earth. Aeneas, seeking to honor the customs of his new home, sent his son Ascanius out to hunt for game to sacrifice to the gods. But the hunt did not go unnoticed. Almo, a beloved keeper of the royal stags of Tyrus, was grazing his herd by the river when the Trojan hounds picked up the scent. The hunt was on. Ascanius, guided by the hand of the goddess Juno, who hated the Trojans with a divine malicia, drew his bow. The arrow flew true, piercing the heart of a magnificent stag, a beast so tame and beautiful it was cherished like a pet by the Latin people. The beast did not die immediately. It staggered back to its master, bleeding out on the white threshold of the kingdom as Pallas. The grief of the Latins turned instantly to rage. The rustics, seeing their tame beast butchered by foreigners, grabbed their axes and hunting spears. It was a skirmish born of accident, but fed by ancient xenophobia. The blood of young men stained the riverbanks, and the first to fall was old Tyrus, struck down while trying to protect his stag. The peace was shattered. Juno, seeing the violence ignite, ripped the gates of the war goddess temple wide open. Turnus, sensing the moment had arrived, mobilized his army. He summoned the furies of Italia, the Auruncans, the Sicani, the Volscians, and the fierce Pelasgians. They came like a flood, a forest of spears moving to wash the Trojans back into the sea. Aeneas, caught in a trap, found himself isolated. His ships were moored on the Tiber, but the enemy forces were swarming the land. In this desperate hour, divine intervention came in a form that would define the Roman spirit. The river god Tiberinus rose from the misty waters of the Tiber. He spoke not of magic, but of strategy. He told Aeneas to seek alliances. "Do not fear the host that threatens you," the river murmured. "Seek the Palladium of Italy. Go upstream to the forest of the Etruscans." The Etruscans were a people of ancient power, ruled by the tyrant Mezentius, a man so cruel that his own people had cast him out. They were now looking for a leader, and the Tiber god promised that Aeneas was that man. Leaving his son and the elderly in the fortified camp of the Trojans, Aeneas embarked on a desperate journey up the winding river to secure the cavalry of Trojan, the Etruscan king. It was a race against time. While the father sought aid, the son and the old men held the walls. The Rutulians descended upon the Trojan camp like a storm. The siege engines roared, and the gates trembled. The Rutulians, confident in their numbers, attempted to burn the Trojan fleet. But here, the myth touches the fantastic. The fleet was not built of ordinary timber. It was crafted from pines sacred to the goddess Cybele. As the flames licked the hulls, the wood began to writhe. The masts turned to arms, the hulls to bodies, and the prows curved into heads of nymphs. The ships tore themselves from the mud and dove into the sea as naiads, leaving the Trojans trapped on land. This was the mercy of the gods, saving their vessels but dooming them to stand and fight. The siege became a nightmare of close combat. Two Trojan youths, Nisus and Ialus, attempted a daring night raid to reach Aeneas, driven by the desperate hope of breaking the siege. They infiltrated the sleeping enemy camp, slaughtering scores in the silence. But their greed for glory was their undoing. Stopping to loot the shining armor of a slain captain, they were caught in the light of dawn. Euryalus was captured, and Nisus, rushing back to save his friend, threw himself upon the enemy's spears, dying in a futile embrace of loyalty. Their heads were impaled on spikes, a grim sight that greeted the Trojans at dawn. The battle that followed was a slaughterhouse. Turnus, clad in gold and wielding a massive sword, cut through the Trojan ranks like a reaper through wheat. He taunted the defenders, challenging them to single combat, mocking their fear. To protect the camp, the old men and the boys finally lowered the bridge and charged. It was a chaotic melee, a Lucantes, a frenzy where grandfathers fought alongside grandsons. Even Aeneas' friend, the faithful Achates, was wounded. The Trojans, weary and outnumbered, were driven back to the trenches, barely holding the line as the sun set on a field of corpses. But the tide was turning. Far up the river, Aeneas had secured the alliance. He returned not with a handful of men, but with an army. The Etruscan cavalry thundered down the banks, led by Aeneas himself, shod in armor forged by Vulcan, shining like a second sun. The siege was broken. The narrative shifts from a desperate defense to a war of movement. The Trojans and their Etruscan allies swept the Rutulians back. Turnus, realizing he could not face the combined might of the Trojans and the Etruscans in open field, resorted to the strategy of the ambush. He called upon the sorceress Camilla, the Volscian virgin warrior who fought with the swiftness of the wind. She led the cavalry in a brilliant display of horsemanship, flinging javelins with deadly precision. She drove the Etruscan horsemen back, becoming the terror of the battlefield. But her hubris was fatal. Seeing a richly dressed Trojan, she chased him away from the main force, seeking his plunder. It was a trap. Aruns, a skilled Etruscan archer, had been hunting her. As she passed, he loosed his spear. It pierced her chest. Camilla fell, and with her death, the cavalry crumbled. The Volscians fled, and